Yeah, I think, one thing that I've gone through a few years ago was, when I was faced with making a decision of thinking I wanted to create a change, it was, really writing down, three things, right? It was like, what is the very worst thing that can happen if I make this change? What is the very best outcome if I make this change? And then what will happen if I do nothing? And usually when you can actually rationally put those down on paper, you will find that the risk of not taking the change is greater than making the change. And I think what you guys just all described, that's great for the personal mindset, right? Like the personal change that we need to make. But I love what you guys are all sharing, which is the connection and the relationship that you're building with the students in order to help both come to an agreement that you're having that same vision that this is how we're going to change and this is how we can go about doing it. And one thing that I think is so important, and I know we're kind of coming to the end here, but I'd really like you to share, because I know we've all kind of talked about that this isn't always an easy thing, right? And so maybe share something that a change that was difficult for you, with whether it was for you personally or with your class, and then what kind of feeling did you get after that happened, after you were successful in making the change? What did it mean to you? What did it mean to your class, your community, your school? Because I think those are the things that inspire people to go through with it when something seems to get a little bit tough and they just want to revert back to the status quo.
I guess I'll go first. When this whole change thing really wasn't a mindset. It was a 24-hour day decision, just every single day. No, that's not true. I did set out to make a change in my classroom. I did set out knowing that I needed to start building with relationships in my classroom. And that happened, and it was magnificent. And it gave me, and with that, I let it become a student-centered classroom, and all the rest of the magic happened on its own, not knowing. Because the great thing about change is you don't necessarily know the path and the end result. And sometimes that can be tenfold what you expected on that list that you described. And that's the genuine payback, which is the case in the changes that I made in my classroom this time. And I'd like to think that my students had a great experience as well. They still come by and, hey, Miss Hake, that's a great payback at the end of the day. So
I think with me, it was when in our middle school, we introduced the BYOD. So it was it was not only a BYOD, but it was a real BYOD. We had kids in there with Amazon. Like we held a focus group one time where we were really telling parents we wanted to meet the students where they're at. And we got called out for it, and I was glad we did. And someone called us out and said, yeah, but you're saying they can only use an iPad or whatever it is. So we literally had a year where we let anything in. And as long as they were able to get to the website that was the learning management system, and they were able to send the email on the device, they could bring it. So there was Nooks, there was all kinds of stuff flying around. And the teachers were quite panicked. And what I found was the best way to let the change happen was to actually ask them to do nothing. And we got to a point where, because we were having all these meetings and we were trying to, every time there was a suggestion, there was 2 or 3 things that could go wrong, going back to what you're saying, Tim, if we were mapping it out. And we got to the point where we said, fine, here's what we're going to do. For the first quarter of the year, do nothing. All I asked is that every once in a while, and it can be one time in a week, you ask the kid to look something up on the internet. And we literally started that way. We said, if they want to take notes, they can take notes. If they want to do this, they can do this. And it didn't take long for the kids to actually start collaborating together, and then the teachers seeing the magic that was having even a one-to-one device in every student's hand in the classroom. And it was very natural, as some teachers were asking them to have some tech time and work on a project. The kids on the iPad would sit next to a kid that had the laptop, and that way the laptop kid would take the notes, and the iPad student would look things up. And it was very natural. And everyone saw that this was something that could be really, really cool. And of course, we had to tweak things. We had to get rid of the nooks. We had to get rid of certain things because they were too limited. The student experience wasn't the same. But that first year was kind of the wild, wild west. And it was really good that we were able to identify failures, justify to our parents, because we're an independent school, they pay tuition to go there, why we made the decisions we made, and also let students feel like they were part of this big movement that no one had before. Similar to, I'm sure, for the first time, if a student was allowed to use cell phones in the class, that's a big deal. And we kind of told those students, you guys have a responsibility to use it the right way, because we're giving you the acknowledgement that you're responsible enough to do it. And so it was a big process, but I was very happy with how it came out, but there was definitely stumbling blocks along the way.
Yes, hi. And I think with every change, almost every change, there's usually some degree of fear. You're afraid of, you experience more fear with some changes and less with others. The one that I wanted to share, talk about is personal change in terms of progression, career progression, being able to move from maybe just being a classroom teacher to taking on leadership responsibility, or maybe even changing schools. I'm not quite sure what the system is like in America. I think I don't know if you tend to stay in the same school to get tenure, but here you're encouraged, as in, so if you've been teaching for a few years, in order to maybe go into leadership, you don't necessarily need to stay in your school. So they would encourage you maybe to apply to other places when spots open up. And I remember every time that I wanted to make that change, because once you've been somewhere for a while, you're used to it. You know your students, you know your colleagues, you know how everything works. Moving into a new school, even if it's a promotion, it's almost as if you're starting from scratch. You have to learn, to build relationships and so on. So for me, taking that step to come out of my comfort zone was not always easy, but I always found it extremely rewarding whenever I followed through with it.
Wow, I can't believe we've gone almost an hour already and our time is up. I really just want to thank all of you for being here and being part of this. It really meant a lot to me. It's something that I love hearing, and I think we could use some of your ideas, not just in the classroom, but in businesses, and creating change and overcoming some of these obstacles, because I think we could definitely use that perspective. But thank you all so much. And I encourage all of you, if you do have some ideas, come to our website at ceduad.com and just sign up and write about your experience, because I know that will even reach more people and get other people inspired to help create change and overcome the obstacles that any change really encompasses. So thank you all so much. And for everybody listening and watching, you can now get ready to join us for our next session, which is going to be talking about connecting with podcast. Talking about building relationships and how you can do that over with your voice out over the internet, I think is going to be a great thing. I just heard somebody speak the other week. They called it, just think of it as windshield time when you're driving, right? What you can listen to. So please join us for that. And always, I encourage everybody to go on Twitter, follow the hashtag CEDUAD, because there's lots of comments. And I know we were focused on the conversation here. So jump on there and respond to some people. So thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you all. It was an honor. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.